ready, go. I'm just playing a single key, and it's giving us these nice chords. And now we've got a nice little loop going here. All of the major parts of a song are covered. We've got our drums, we've got a bass line, we've got chords, and we've got a melody. If you are a beginner trying to make your own beats, trying to produce music, and you've got BandLab, whether that be on the web or on your mobile device, my name is Taetro, and today I'm going to walk you through and simplify the process of making a beat in BandLab. There are so many approaches to starting making a beat. BandLab has a cool feature called SongStarter, and I want to start there today. This is the easiest way to get up and running to start making a beat. Let's select a genre. Today I'm going to be making a lo-fi beat. So I'll click Get Started, and it's going to start generating some ideas. Oh, here's our first idea. Now, it's generated by AI, so the ideas here are not all going to be perfect, and they might not be the exact direction you want to go to, but there's still going to be value in starting here with the song starter. I'll explain that in a minute. That one kind of has a mysterious vibe. Let's try the third choice. What I'm listening for is the instrumentation, what types of drums did they use, what types of synths, which fits closest to the vision and style I have in mind today. That one's pretty good. And that one's pretty good too, but let's up the tempo a little bit. Let's go to 75 BPM. We can even change the key if we wanted to, but that sounds fine. Now, we're obviously going to write our own music today, but as a place to start, this is a good jumping off point because what we've got is a session where not only are there musical ideas already chosen, but more importantly, the instrumentation has already been chosen. We can add more and we can alter this later, but it's a good way to get up and running quickly. Because now, if I grab my MIDI controller, you can also use your QWERTY keyboard. And we've got all of our basic parts here covered for the most part. We've got a nice synth line, like a guitar type instrument, a bass, a drum kit, a little bit of ambience audio recorded here. Let's see what that is. Oh, it's like a little bit of vinyl or tape sound. That's cool. So off the bat here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this as a jumping off point to write our own music. I'm going to delete all the musical ideas besides the ambience because I like that. I'm going to delete all of that MIDI. I'm going to keep that tape ambience. And I'm going to start by looping the first 4 bars here with these red brackets. I can click right here in the top of the timeline, make sure it's a nice bright red, and extend the brackets for however long I want my initial phrase to be. If you don't know too much about timing or anything like that for your first beat, try to work in increments of 4, 8, 16, etc. I'm going to start by just trying to create an initial 4-bar loop. And since we've already set our tempo, and I really like how those drums sound, I'm going to turn the metronome on. I think I have an idea of the feel I want to go for. Let's try to record that in. 2, ready, go. If you're not a super pro finger drummer, like I'm certainly not, that might be a little challenging for me to play that full 4 bars. I'm going to just reduce that down to just the kick and snare, and we can layer in the hi-hat later. Let's try that. Ready, go. Doom. There, we've looped. It wasn't perfect, but we are able to click on this MIDI track here, look at our notes, and we can quantize this pattern. Quantize is going to snap everything to the grid for us. So if I click and drag and just draw a box over all those notes there, I can select them all and then I can hit quantize. I can choose what grid I want to quantize them to. Like if I quantize them to 8th notes, I'm going to lose my 16th notes. You can see that it drastically changed. If that happens to you, undo and change your rate. You might need a little bit of a faster rate for your quantization grid. And since I am playing some 16th notes in there, that's pretty good. I also have a Humanize button here. So after I quantize and snap everything to the grid, I can hit Humanize, which is going to pull things off a little bit from the grid, but still keep it relatively in time. Okay, so we have our drum pattern. I'm going to turn my metronome off. The other thing I'm going to do is hold my Options or Alt key if you're a Windows user, and I'm basically going to copy this clip over to the next 4 bars, making sure it's nice and even, starting on bar 5, going all the way through to bar 8. These 2 clips should fit right next to each other with no extra space in between. The reason I'm doing this is now I'm going to pull my loop brackets over, is because I want to layer on top. I want to play some hi-hats over the top of this. So now I'm going to record starting from this loop, starting from bar 5, and now we're going to create a version of the drums that has hi-hat. It's going to play us before, and we're going to start recording right on bar 5. Good. It's come back around. Of course, I didn't play that perfectly, and we didn't even have the metronome on while we were recording, but that's okay. You remember that there's a Humanize button here, and another way of getting humanized drums is to just play them in and not quantize at all. Another element of these drums that you hear right now, they're getting softer and louder, right? That's something natural that a drummer would do, and if we're using velocity-sensitive pads, we can add that element. Makes the loop slightly more dynamic. If we don't like the performance of the velocity, we could of course record it again, or we could click this V button right here, select the notes we want to edit, and change their velocity. You can do this for individual notes. So if I said, oh, that velocity was a little too hard, I could bring it down. And say you don't have a velocity-sensitive controller, maybe you're just playing on your QWERTY keyboard, you can select the notes, choose randomize, and that might make it sound a little more natural rather than having a rigid 1 velocity the whole time. So we've got 2 versions of the drums now. We've got kick and snare, and then kick, snare, and hi-hat. With that, I think we're ready to start building up a chord progression on top. Now, since we started with SongStarter, our track is already in a key. We can stay in that key, E flat major if you're comfortable, or change it to a key that you're comfortable with. This is definitely important to set before we start entering in any tonal elements, because if we decide to insert new elements later in BandLab and they have a key, it will try to transpose them to be in our labeled key here at the top. So we want to make sure we're either playing in this key from the beginning or we're changing it to the actual key we want the song to be in. I'm happy with saying an E flat major, but I'd actually like to switch out the sound. So I'm going to go down here into our sound bank by selecting the melody instrument, and let's try to find something else. I do like the idea of starting with a guitar, so let's find a guitar that's closer to what I'm actually going for. Acoustic guitar does sound good. Clean guitar is more of like an amplified sound. I actually like that acoustic guitar sound, but since we used SongStarter, there is a selection of effects that it's automatically put on this group. Some of those will be having an effect on the sound, like this multi-shifter. It's giving us an extra octave. I'd like to have solo notes only here. So just keep an eye on that if you used SongStarter. All these other effects, the sound is sounding pretty good otherwise. You might want to not have so much reverb, but we'll talk about effects in a minute. Let's go back to our instrument and let's actually try to use smart chords. And I'm going to just change the complexity using this XY pad. That's giving us some nice ninth sounds. And I'm going to turn up the strum so we get a strummed guitar sound. I could also turn this the opposite way and it'll strum down. Let's play along with the drums and see how this sounds. I'm just playing a single key, and it's giving us these nice chords. But I'm happy with that sound. Using smart chords is a really easy way to get a good chord progression going by playing a single key, especially if you're limited with what type of controller you're using or your just overall piano skills. Let's record this chord progression. 3, 4, 1, 2, ready, go. Now, what's actually happened here is I wanted these strummed notes to come in much earlier. I wanted it to strum almost like leading into the chords. So what I'm going to do instead is delete that idea, extend my little loop bracket over to bar 4. Now we're going to try that again. We're going to come in a little early, but on purpose. Ready, go. This way the chord lands directly on that downbeat. Okay, so now we have it. It's not going to look perfectly in time when we look at it on the grid, but that's okay. It's going to sound good. If you're having trouble with the strum settings, make sure that in your settings menu, Quantize MIDI recordings is turned off. Otherwise, it's going to try to snap all those cool strums to a grid. You might want to get into the habit of turning that on, turning that off, depending on the different musical ideas that you're playing. Just like with drums, we can play melodic instruments softly or loudly, depending on our velocity. And I did make a mistake in there with my velocity. I think that last chord was a little too light. So I'm just going to bring the velocity up, selecting all those notes, bringing them up. You can have variation in your velocity, but that was a little too drastic and unintentional on my part. So here it goes. Nice. Now, since this musical idea starts a little bit before the downbeat, ultimately it's going to look weird on the grid, but I might just occasionally shrink it back down so that it starts on the downbeat when I need to copy and paste the different ideas. But for now, I'm just going to leave it overhanging a little bit and move on to another element. The bass is the easiest direction to go after this because I can just remember what notes I played for the chords and play those same notes. Make sure I'm in a bassy octave. Let's record the bass. 1, 2, 3, go. Now this bass line doesn't need to overhang at all, so I'm going to completely shrink that down to an even 4 bars, and we are going to quantize these notes 100%, so they're just snapped to that grid. And for this bass line, I want these notes to be nice and long, but I don't want them to overhang. If they overhang, it's going to start to get muddy. You can see that these notes at a certain level, even for just a millisecond, can cross over. We don't want that. So you can go into the grid, select each individual note, and stretch it, making sure that it only lasts until the following note starts. No overlapping for the bass line here. All right, what's this instrument up here that it gave us? Some type of lead synth? That sounds like a pretty cool instrument. It's a little soft in the mix, so I'm going to bring the level up here. And just like we talked about before, since we use SongStarter, we already have some effects on this, which don't sound bad. But I do think I want to bring down some of the low frequencies in this because it is a lead instrument. And I actually want to bring up the reverb, I think, a bigger reverb. Turning up the mix so we're getting more of that reverberated sound. And then bring up the volume a bit more. We can adjust the tone of our reverb. Are we hearing more high frequencies in the reverb, or are we hearing more of those low frequencies? And I think I'd like to add one more effect. I'd like to add a delay to give this lead a sense of rhythm. So I'm going to use ping pong delay, which is going to ping pong the sound back and forth between our ears to a certain degree. And I'm going to put that before our reverb. The order of your effects does matter. So just remember that those effects are all running through each other. So do you want the reverb on top of the delay or the delay on top of the reverb? I prefer to have the reverb on top of the delay, so delay needs to come first. So feedback is going to be how much of those delays are we going to get? How long is it going to go for? It doesn't need to be too high. The rhythm can be different for each ear, so let's try a dotted eighth and a quarter. And I can bring the mix down for this as well. Play this over the top, play a little higher. And this is our first melody of the track. If you're having trouble coming up with melodies, just select a few notes from the scale that you think sound good over the whole loop and try to come up with a pattern to play, a pattern or two to jump off of, and think about how do those patterns relate to each other. So if I start the track and I play, that goes up, the next thing I play might need to go down. That's kind of a simple way to think about melody. You can also think about play fast, then play slow. So here, I'd actually like to start working in an 8-bar pattern. So I'm going to extend our bracket all the way through bar 12, and I'm going to loop these ideas, just clicking and dragging from that loop icon. I'm going to do that for the drums and the bass, and then I want to do it for the chords as well, but you remember we have sort of that pickup note. The guitar chords start strumming before our downbeat happens. So I'm going to shorten that back down to being 4 bars, and instead of looping it and pulling that loop across, I'm going to hold options and drag a copy of that loop over here, and I'm going to pull the beginning head just about here so that I can start ahead of time. Same thing for this one here. It's just a little bit of a complexity if we have a note starting before our downbeat. You won't always have that in your beats, but it's just something you'll have to think about. So now the reason for doing this is I can play a longer melody over the top of this. So let's record now a simple melody playing a few notes, thinking about the direction. 1 up. Let's answer that with downward motion. Then we have 4 more bars. Let's play something similar. not totally the same. And now we've got a nice little loop going here. All of the major parts of a song are covered. We've got our drums, we've got a bass line, we've got chords, and we've got a melody. If you think of that as a traditional band, you think of your guitarist, your bass player, your singer, and your drummer. Think of any rock band. Those are the parts we're covering here. But there's one last thing I want to do while we're in this idea of just writing in loops. What I would like to do is loop the drums back over for 4 more bars. And I'm going to come up with a new chord progression using our guitar instrument. Why a new chord progression? Well, because songs aren't just made up of single chord progressions. They often have multiple, and the chord progression often changes depending on what section of the song you're in. So I really wouldn't want the same chord progression for the whole song. So now I'm going to think about, just like with our melody, how we were thinking about, oh, let's go up, then let's go down, like contrasting motion. With this next chord progression, I'm going to think, what's different? Well, our first chord progression started on E flat major, a nice major chord. Let's start this next 4-bar progression on a minor chord. Let's try that. I think that sounds pretty good. And I'm just going to record that over the drums that we already have. So simple. And I'm going to go back to the smart chords functions under instrument. And I'm just going to do a little bit less strumming here. A little bit faster, or we could change the direction. Actually, I like that. Let's do upward strumming instead of downward strumming in this section. Record, 2, 3, 4. And since we've got a new chord progression now, let's go into the bass and record a new bass line for this section. 2, ready, go. Instead of playing long notes, I'll play a little rhythm for the bass line this time. Great. So always thinking about, if we're going to have a new section, how can it be slightly different than our first section? Not playing long bass notes, playing still a simple bass line, but with a little bit of rhythm, and then playing a new chord progression being centered on a major chord, centering it on that minor chord. And on that note, since we've got a new section here, why don't we add a new instrument? And I'm going to go ahead and make this section now 8 bars as well, now that we've come up with the bass level idea for it. Let's loop the idea, keep that ambience going here. And instead of bringing in our old melodic instrument, let's add a track and let's play some guitar. So I'm just going to select guitar, which we can select a preset for. Jazz chorus, I don't know how that's going to sound. Let's give it a shot. Let's select our source. I've got my Scarlett interface, plug in the guitar, and I can hear it pretty loud and clear. A little too loud, actually. Let's bring up the reverb on that. Go back to our effects and see what this new effects rack is doing, the jazz chorus. And I'm just going to play something super simple and palm muted. Recording process is the same as before. Let's do this for 4 bars. Here we go. Good, we've got a loop there. And for another 4 bars, I'm just going to come up with one more idea that's a little different than that previous one, and we'll be able to use those later in our arrangement process. Let's record. 2. So what we have now is a collection of musical ideas that are all enough to make one complete beat. But that was just the writing stage. In the next tutorial, we're going to talk about mixing some of these sounds and arranging our track so that it's not just a couple random loops. We need to take the listener on a journey. So check that out here on BandLab's channel. Would love to hear if you found this tutorial helpful in the comments down below. Please leave a like on your way out. My name is Taetro here with BandLab. Have a good one.